Oh, there you are, YouTube. Doodle 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 doo. Subscribe if you're interested, but also no pressure. Hey, we are going to review the third episode of X-Men 97. What's it called? It's like called Fire and Flesh, Fire to Flesh, Fire from Flesh. I can't remember. The word fire is in it, the word flesh is in it, and then there's some word in between them, maybe two. So this was stuff, what I was seeing here was stuff that I knew about, but it was interesting seeing it come into play because this is stuff, so I'd never really read the comics much, but I read about the comics. So I'd also get the X-Men trading cards, right? And those X-Men trading cards had a lot of valuable information on the back that helped you learn about the X-Men characters, who they were, who their family members were, and powers, like all sorts of stuff, right? So we have an introduction of some characters in the previous episode. So I guess let me just say spoilers because I'm going to say some stuff in this one. So this is a spoiler sort of episode, and we met baby Nate Gray in the previous episode, right? It's Jean and Scott's son, and I remember leaning over to my wife when we were watching it. I was like, they're gonna name him Nate. Well, Nathan. They're gonna name him that, and then they did, and I was like, see, told you. But everybody who knows anything about the X-Men knew that, so I wasn't amazing for guessing that or anything. But there's more to that story then, because at the end of the second episode, Jean shows up and she's all like, I'm another Jean or something like that, and so then we have two Jean Greys, and then it's like, well, I know who that other one is, and then we're like, it's the Goblin Queen. And we find that out in this episode. She names herself, I'm the Goblin Queen. And we know who's responsible. Mr. Sinister is involved, right? And then, so yeah, we have all these characters here that, I guess we had Mr. Sinister in the original series as well. So we're already familiar with him. But it was pretty cool to sort of get this storyline of X-Man and Nate Gray grows up to be X-Man. And this was stuff, I knew from reading the backs of cards, and this little guidebook here that I grew up with called Ultimate X-Men with a foreword by Stan Lee over here. And I just had all sorts of information. I would just read this thing all the time, learning about the X-Men. I used to do reports in junior high. It was it's 2000. So in high school, and I would use this as a resource, I remember. And let me show you some of the spots where I learned about some of these characters in this book. I bookmarked some spots to show you where I learned about some of these things. So let's do this right here. Okay, so here, this is a great little resource page. Here, the Summers, so Scott Summers, that's Cyclops. And here we have, so there's Havoc, his brother, but over here we have his family tree. So if we look at his family tree, wow, I'll ruin my mustache. If we take a look at this, we see Scott Summers. He's right here. This says Scott Summers. And this is Jean Grey. But then we have a dotted line over here that shows Madelyne Pryor, who's the Goblin Queen, the other Jean Grey, who is a clone of Jean created by Mr. Sinister. I don't even think I went over that. I just started jumping through information here. So that's like a dotted line showing she's a clone, and it says underneath, cloned by Sinister. So when I didn't read the comics or anything, but when all this was playing out in the show, I was like, I know this because I had read this book when I was younger, back in my high school days. And then if we follow, so here's Cyclops right here, and here is the Goblin Queen, who we just met. So if we go down here, down, and then down, boom, we have Nathan Christopher Summers, who is Cable. Wait a second, what? Where's X-Man? Oh, sorry. Oh, dang. Oh my gosh, oh my goodness. I'm figuring things out. I'm figuring things out. I kept saying X-Man, but here, X-Man and Cable are the same person, but they are from One's from Goblin Queen, one's from Jean Grey. Oh my goodness. Sorry, everybody. I was giving you wrong information. But it's good that I pulled this resource out because we can all straighten out together. You probably already knew. I'm the one who's forgotten after all these years. I mean, this book came out in the year 2000 or something. Maybe it's 2001. Anyway, so we have Cyclops right here and Goblin Queen, and then boom, goes down to Nate Summers, who is Cable, right? And then if we go down here, down this red line right here, so red line, we got Jean Grey. This is Jean Grey, Phoenix, and Scott Summers here. So the red line here, boom, boom, that's Nate Grey. So Nathan, Nate, Nathan, Nate, and that's X-Man, genetically engineered by Sinister. Wow, okay. So, am I doing all of that right? Okay, Scott Summers, boom, boom, Madelyne Pryor, Goblin Queen, creates Cable, and then Scott and Jean creates X-Man. I think that's where I was getting mixed up, because here it says Goblin Queen was cloned by Sinister, and then down here X-Man was engineered by Sinister, so I think that was sort of working together in my brain before I took a look at the book. I just pulled this book out a minute ago before I started filming, like a minute before I started filming. I should have reviewed it. I was just going based off memory, and boy was I wrong. But yeah, I think the Sinister connection between Goblin and Nate, X-Man, got me there. So always review your materials before you start filming. That's okay. Maybe it's more dynamic and more fun. Okay, so here we have more information where I sort of learned about the Goblin Queen, because again, I wasn't reading about her in comics. This page is dedicated, or this here, 2 pages dedicated to Mr. Sinister. I always thought he looked pretty cool here. And right here, the Goblin Queen and Sinister so let me show you that right there. So that's them. And so here's a little section I'll read to you. Having created Madelyne Pryor, Goblin Queen, to bear Scott Summers' mutant child Nathan, Sinister no longer needed her once he captured the infant. But by then, Pryor had become the powerful Goblin Queen and fought back against Sinister, rescuing Nathan before she perished in combat with Jean Grey. Ooh, spoilers! I think it'll be different in the animated series, because a lot of this stuff is different. But yeah, this is where I'm learning about her, right? So when I'm watching this show, I'm like, oh, okay, this is making sense. I know what's going to happen, but I was a little wrong, as we saw before. I was thinking that baby the entire time was X-Man when it was Cable. Okay, speaking of X-Man, this is him right here. So he's basically, you know, Cable. So it's like, you know, Goblin Queen and Cyclops made Cable, and then Cyclops and Jean Grey, who is the original Jean Grey, where Goblin Queen is a clone, right, made X-Man, who's right here, but genetically modified by Sinister. So that I'm going to have to read up on. Man, there's a lot of stuff here. So I'm not going to read all of this, but so here we have the Goblin Queen in that image. Right here. See, I always thought X-Man was such a lame name. Also, I don't know, maybe I respect it more, but as a kid I was like, you're calling this guy X-Man? But when I think about it, you know, we're talking about Scott and Jean, like the first X-Men. So it's like okay for, I don't know, it's okay. It makes sense to me that the first X-Men are going to name their kid X-Man, or their kid is going, they're not naming him that, but their first kid is going to be called X-Man for his fighting name, mutant name, right? Here, more imagery. X-Man Unleashed. More imagery of him down here. There he is as a little baby. Yeah, there he is there. So, yeah, that's where I got my information about them, and why what I was seeing on screen wasn't totally surprising to me, and I thought I had a a handle on it, a grip on it, was because of this little book here that I've read so many times. Clearly not enough because I made that mistake. But again, I think I understand why I made that mistake when you think of the sinister aspect to both of those characters. All right. So, did I give you a close-up? I don't think I did, of the family tree. I mean, I was kind of pointing stuff out, so I think that's fine. But, yeah, I like this episode. I think, yeah, I like this episode, but I think I like the other two more. The other two felt like the original show a little bit more. This one felt a little bit more advanced or something, like it was shooting more for contemporary styles, which is fine. You know, you got to do that. But yeah, I'm just excited to see where things move forward. I mean, I love the X-Men. That's a great show, and I love what they're doing with the comeback. I think it's really good. But anyway, what did you think of the episode? Did you know this stuff was going to happen? Did you read the comics and know? Did you read this book and know? How did you know? And were you confused by any of it? Or did you think you had a grasp on it like I did, and then you ended up being confused once you found out the reality of the situation? But again, the animated shows take some creative liberties, license, just like the movies do. You know, they're not exactly like the comics, but it's pretty close. I think it's a good adaptation from what I know about the comics. Again, I don't read them. So, anyway, yeah, let me know your thoughts on the episode. I love to know. And perhaps we'll see you tomorrow for more Pure Hangout.